you all oh, to please hold all comments until the end of the presentation. And this meeting is planned to go until 7:30 p.m. this evening. Next slide, please. So please note that all participants are muted upon entry so that presenters can be heard. We'll also like to remind everyone that this meeting is being audio and visually recorded and will be made publicly available for those who are unable to attend on our website. Before we get started, we'll go over a few Zoom controls and some background information. Yeah, you all should have seen that little this meeting is being recorded button pop up on your screen. Next slide, please. And just some Title VI information. So all MBTA activities, including public meetings, are free of discrimination. The MBTA complies with all federal and state civil rights requirements, preventing discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, limited English proficiency, and additional protected characteristics. We welcome the diversity from across our entire service area. And if you have any questions or concerns, please visit mbta.com/Title VI to reach the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights. Next slide, please. Awesome. So some language interpretation information. We are offering Spanish, Chinese, and Haitian Creole interpretation this evening, as well as American Sign Language. You'll notice a globe icon at the bottom right of your screen. Please select English in the drop-down menu if you wish to remain in the English room, and the same applies for the other 3 language options. You'll be able to see the presentation, but only hear the audio in the language that you selected. And we have some interpreters in the room with us. So say hello to Amos, our Haitian Creole interpreter, Ellen, our Mandarin interpreter, and Elena, our Spanish interpreter. Next slide, please. And then we also have some ASL interpreters with us as well. If you would like to view the ASL interpreter at all times, keep your view settings in gallery mode. It will be the default setting. You can change this by clicking the button that says Gallery Mode in the top right of your screen, and Gallery Mode shows all presenters on the screen together. This ensures that you can see the interpreter as well as the speaker. If a presenter is sharing slides, the view will change. Your screen will primarily display the slides with the presenters and interpreters video moving to be small in the top right corner. Often the default setting will show only the speaker, not the ASL interpreter. To change this, you can pin the interpreter's video. And to do this, click the ellipses or 3 dots in the top right corner of the interpreter's video and select Pin Video. You'll need to repeat this process each time we switch interpreters. And we also have Alicia and Nicole here with us tonight. Next slide, please. We also have closed captioning available. Please click the CC button at the bottom of your screen. You're able to click and drag the captions to better see the presentation as well. Next slide. And if any technical questions come up and you need assistance with Zoom, please chat with tech support. They are named MBTA Tech Support in the chat. Otherwise, we'll save questions at the end where participants can use the raise hand feature. Next slide. All right. I've been chatting for a bit, so I'm just going to allow Marcella to give a quick intro about who she is, and we'll jump in.
Thank you, Katie. Hi, everyone. My name is Marcella Moreno. I am the MBTA project manager for the Longwood Medical Area Bus Circulation Study in the MBTA Bus Transformation Office. So my body of work is largely focused on different aspects of bus network redesign implementation, including the circulation study that we're talking about today.
Thank you. And not only am I a moderator and presenter tonight, but I am also the community engagement specialist on the bus transformation team with Marcella, and I've been helping support her through this process with all the engagement needs, including this meeting tonight. Next slide, please. All right, so jumping in, what brings us here tonight? Some of you may be familiar with the MBTA's bus network redesign. This is the MBTA's plan to grow and restore bus service across the network. We completed engagement and created a plan for most of the network in 2022 and officially started implementing changes in December of last year. However, we knew that the LMA had a lot more transportation challenges and needs than other neighborhoods. So bus network redesign has this sort of asterisk over the LMA That exact routing is to be determined, but that's what the bus circulation study is for and why we're here tonight. But bus network redesign did still outline some pieces for us, though. So we know that bus service will increase by about 75% in the LMA, which is a lot. Today, there are 2 frequent routes in the LMA, but we plan to bring that to 6. So that would be the 12, a new route, 22, 28, 39, 47, and 66. The 22 and 28 will be extended. There'll also be some changes to the 65, 66, and 47. And we will, of course, introduce this new Route 12. And lastly, a larger goal of the bus network redesign is to increase weekend, evening, midday service, or what we call off-peak service. But this is especially important in an area with dense medical facilities to support the second and third shift workers, students, and patients needing to travel to or through the LMA at all times of day. Next slide, please. But to get here, we need to complete the bus circulation study to determine where and how we route service to best meet the needs of riders and provide reliable and frequent service. Uh, but I'm going to pass it to Marcella to share some updates on the project status. Next slide, please.
Okay, awesome. So since our project kicked off in winter 2025, the project team has completed the existing phase of the study, which is why we're here today to provide an update. So what has this included? We've been working with our interagency working group, which is a group of stakeholders from within the MBTA, the City of Boston, Town of Brookline, the Longwood Collective, Harvard, MassDOT, the Department of Conservation and Recreation. This group is focused on transportation providers and roadway owners in and within the study area. We've also finalized the existing conditions report. So the report will be published on the studies project webpage in the coming days. And today we'll run through some of the key findings. And we're also finishing round 1 engagement. So this meeting will conclude round 1 of engagement, which was focused on existing conditions and understanding community priorities and concerns. We had pop-up events in the Longwood medical area. We held focus groups with bus operators and emergency medical technicians and had a workshop with community organizations in and around the Longwood medical area. Next slide, please. So this slide is a broad overview of the study timeline. So where we're at now is we're moving from existing conditions to alternatives development. So this was intended to establish a baseline of the opportunities and challenges that we must address or work with in our different alternatives proposals. We will have a second round of engagement in winter 2026, and this is when we'll publish up to 4 routing and infrastructure scenarios and have a series of engagement events. So you'll be hearing from us again. Next slide, please. So let's dive in to the key findings from the existing conditions report. Next slide. Thank you. So there is a lot of transit service in and close to the Longwood medical area. The MBTA runs 9 bus routes to the LMA. These routes primarily use Huntington Avenue, Louis Prang and Ruggles Street, Longwood Avenue, Brookline Avenue. The C, D, and E branches of the Green Line are walking distance from some of the key locations in the area as well. And the nearest Orange Line station is Ruggles, which, depending on where you're going, can be up to a 30-minute walk away from some of the destinations in the LMA. The Longwood Collective also runs shuttles in the LMA. These shuttles primarily are for employees and students of their member institutions, although an exception to this is the M2, where riders must have a valid Harvard ID, students, staff, or faculty, or purchase a ticket in advance. Tickets are $4 for one-way travel, and then hospitals also run shuttle service in the area. Next slide, please. There are a lot of bus riders in the Longwood medical area. So a couple of takeaways here are that ridership patterns suggest heavy use by commuters traveling to the Longwood medical area institution. So twice as many people get off the bus in morning peak compared to those who board the bus in the same period. And the reverse happens in the evening peak. Twice as many people get on the bus as get off. At hospital stops along Brookline Avenue, Longwood Ave, and Avenue Louis Pasteur, drop-offs are 5 times greater in the morning peak, and boardings are 5 times higher than drop-offs in the peak. So these patterns are very important as we plan for the future. Next slide, please. Speed and reliability are problems for current bus service in the MA. So before I dive into the findings, I just wanted to say something on speed and reliability. So when we say speed, that's how quickly vehicles travel, measured in miles per hour. Reliability is the consistency and predictability of your travel time, meaning does the bus take about the same time to travel between destinations when you're planning a trip? So key findings here were that bus speeds in the Longwood medical area are low, with most travel speeds on most streets being less than 11 miles per hour, and they can be as low as 7 miles per hour. Travel in the Longwood medical area is not reliable. There are no corridors where the slowest trip doesn't take at least 50% more time than the median, although this does vary by corridor and time of day. So for this area specifically, unreliable service could mean a missed medical appointment. It could mean being late for work, perhaps as someone who supports a medical appointment, and travelers choosing other modes. So some not fun facts, but takeaways. Ruggles Street, Avenue Lee Pasteur, Brookline Avenue, and westbound on Longwood Ave have the lowest reliability in the central part of the Longwood medical area. Avenue Louis Pasteur has the highest median speeds across all time periods, but it's the most unreliable street in the study area in the morning peak times. And Longwood Avenue has low speeds all day, and it also sees a lot of transit service in the current network. Next slide, please. Riders also experience a significant amount of delay related to the speed and reliability slide that I talked through just now. Passenger delay is measured by combining passenger loads, how many people are on the bus at a given time, and the minutes of delay. So how long they're delayed compared to the scheduled travel time along the segment of the corridor. So in the Longwood medical area, the segment with the most minutes of passenger delay is the segment at Longwood Ave at Binney Street to Brookline Avenue at Longwood Ave. So you can see that super thick line on the map there. Riders experience a little over 2,000 minutes of delay each weekday on this segment alone, and it's only 500 feet. Next slide, please. Traffic safety is an issue, especially in the core of the Longwood medical area. So traffic safety is an issue, especially the quadrant bound by Huntington Avenue and Brookline Ave between Francis Street and Longwood Avenue. Approximately 20% of study area pedestrian crashes happen in this quadrant. Segments of Longwood Avenue and Brookline Avenue are also on the City of Boston's high crash network. Next slide, please. A lack of pickup, drop-off, coordination, and enforcement causes delay. So a lack of designated pickup and drop-off zones for rideshare or delivery can cause delay. So for example, delivery cars or motorbikes parked on Brookline Avenue to access restaurants or other deliveries in the travel lane can cause operational issues for buses or vehicular traffic. I think this might be a universal experience that we can probably all relate to. And this map is from the Longwood Collective's Transportation Framework and shows transportation network company demand data from 2019. Next slide, please. So according to our Plan for Accessible Transit Infrastructure, PATI database from 2017, 84% of stops in the Longwood medical area do not meet accessibility standards. These standards look at the sidewalk width, curb ramp quality, accessible path of travel, curb height, and the front and back door landing areas where people get on or off the bus. In addition, given the high ridership in the Longwood medical area, a large number of bus stops qualify for amenities like shelters or benches. And of the 32 stops in the study area that qualify for a shelter or bench, only 17 have these amenities today. Next slide, please. So the next couple of slides look ahead and talk about the better bus the bus network redesign proposal for the Longwood medical area and further fleshes out what Katie was saying about the 75% increase in service. Next slide, please. So the Better Bus Network welcomes better transit access to the Longwood Medical Area. So this chart shows trips across all modes, along with existing and proposed Better Bus Network levels of service. So the overall service increase to the Longwood Medical Area is about 75%, with the greatest increase being during off-peak hours, so midday or later in the evening or weekends. The proposed level of service will better match travel demand in the Longwood Medical Area than the current service level. Next slide, please. So more people, about 10% more residents and more neighborhoods like Dorchester and Roxbury will get a one-seat ride to the Longwood Medical Area. So when I say a one-seat ride, that is a trip that doesn't require someone to transfer, meaning someone gets on at their origin, perhaps in their neighborhood, and can get to the Longwood Medical Area without switching buses or trains. So in this map, you can see where there is a one-seat ride gained, and there are some areas where there's a one-seat ride lost. And we did look at the travel time, and that will remain roughly the same, although there will be a transfer added there. Next slide. So this map shows how fast someone can get to the Longwood Medical Area from a certain point. The red part of the map means people in these areas can reach the LMA in 30 minutes, orange is 45, and yellow is 60. In the bus network redesign compared to today's network, 55% more people can reach the Longwood Medical Area in 30 minutes or less during midday, and 24% more people can reach the Longwood Medical Area during. And I've been talking for a while, so we can switch to the next slide and I'll pass it back to Katie.
Thank you, Marcella. So as Marcella shared in the timeline graphic, engagement round 2 is coming this winter. So this is definitely not your last chance to share comments or ask questions. But this meeting tonight is like the last piece of our round 1 engagement. So we have some really exciting findings to share from our engagement so far. So first we did some focus groups with bus operators and EMTs. When speaking to bus operators, we heard a few things, including that operators felt that congestion was very predictable. Signals and intersections were choke points and safety hazards. Enforcement on transit facilities is needed. The good news is that that is coming soon. If you've been following some other bus related work, the MBTA has been leading. Um, there are safety challenges with shared bike and bus lanes. Not a unique problem to the LMA, but definitely a huge need for more layover facilities and restroom access for operators. We also need to ensure that scheduling matches the needs of different times of day, especially with known events such as delivery days, where those are on Wednesdays, and oftentimes travel times are so much longer there, and we should account for that in our schedules. As for EMTs, we partnered with the Boston MPO since they are working on an EMS study. So we just kind of jumped in on their focus groups to gather some additional information. But we heard that EMTs, they just use Google Maps when they navigate, so they're not always using the same path of travel. Unlike bus operators that use the same route unless there's like a detour for construction or something. Response times are impacted by congestion and narrow roads, making it hard for other vehicles to clear space. They also counted that mopeds and scooters don't always follow the rules of the road, creating navigation challenges. Most EMTs don't have training on how to interact with bus lanes and have had mixed experiences. They also emphasize the importance of access to Binney and Francis Street because that's how they access ambulance bays. And they also found that one-way streets were problematic because cars can't pull over. They found it easier and faster to go the opposite direction of traffic on a two-way street. Next slide. So we also conducted intercept surveys at high activity bus stops, Orange Line and Green Line stations, and at a public event outside the Shapiro building at Beth Israel, where we heard from over 350 people. So here we asked people whether they prefer their bus trips to prioritize proximity or reliability. The proximity end of the spectrum would look like a low frequency trip that drops you off right at your destination, whereas the reliability end of the spectrum would look like a high frequency trip on a main corridor, but it would require you to walk or transfer to connect to your destination directly. Um, so while the desire for a one seat ride was echoed among survey participants, we did find that riders value reliability much more than proximity. Next slide, please. And here's a breakdown of what that looked like. Um, while getting to a medical appointment had a little bit of a larger chunk of people who valued proximity more, reliability still by far was the most important thing for riders. We also spoke with a lot of medical staff, um, more so than patients, especially since we knew, um, you know, going into the survey that patients would be more likely to be in a rush or coming in and out of a treatment and thus less likely to stop and respond to our questions. But the medical staff actually did a great job of echoing concerns of patients that they work with as well, and noted that patients would probably prefer proximity over reliability when getting to an appointment. But also through the surveys, we heard other concerns, especially congestion, most notably on Red Sox game days. Overcrowding on the 8 and 47 were brought up among riders. Bus bunching, that's when you wait a long time for a bus and then two come back to back with one full and one maybe not as full. Traffic safety was also highlighted and more requests for better off-peak bus service. Next slide. We also held a workshop with community-based organizations in and around our study area, along with some municipal staffers as well. And we shared the same presentation with them and asked participants to rank what the biggest challenges in the study area were. And we found some very interesting results. So in our group, there was 4 groups. 3 out of 4 groups identified lack of pickup drop-off as a key issue. Um, Inaccessible bus boarding, 2 out of 4 groups identified this as a top issue. Um, 2 out of 4 groups also identified unsafe traffic conditions as a top issue, and 2 out of 4 groups identified road congestion as a top issue. But this is really important feedback for us to confirm the findings from the initial conditions report, but also make sure that we address the needs of the community moving forward. And then we also did a fun activity with participants where we asked them to draw their trip. We printed out maps of the study area and they had different colors representing different modes, whether that's driving, biking, taking the bus. And we actually found that cycling was the most common mode among our participants, which is a very fun finding. Next slide. So as we wrap up the existing conditions phase of work, we want to look ahead at what's next. So for winter 2026, we will publish up to 4 scenarios, a base case, and then up to 3 different routing and infrastructure alternatives. And as part of this engagement, we will have in-person community meetings, more bus and EMS operator engagement, a website update, and hold some focus groups. Uh, but we also have other opportunities to stay engaged as well. We have the Better Bus Project newsletter you can sign up for, or also submit comments through betterbusproject@mbta.com. Next slide. All right, we're going to jump into Q&A. So to make a comment, you must virtually raise your hand. To do this on the computer, press Alt-Y or click Raise Hand button under the Participants tab at the bottom center of your screen. And if you are on a mobile device, you can tap the Raise Hand button in the bottom center of your screen or dial *9 if you're on a phone. And then once you raise your hand, you'll be added to the queue with others who have raised their hands. I will call on folks first come, first serve. And when it's your turn to speak, I'll say your name or the last 4 digits of your phone number out loud, um, and then let you know I'm unmuting you. If you're on a computer or a mobile device, a box will pop up in the center of your screen. You will need to confirm that you'd like to be unmuted before you begin speaking. And then if you're on the phone, an automated recording will let you know that you were unmuted. You may speak as soon as the recording finishes. And then once you're unmuted, everyone in the meeting can hear you. Before making your comment, please state your name and any organizational affiliation if applicable. Please limit all comments to no more than 2 minutes. We ask that you only make one comment at a time so we can ensure everyone gets a chance to speak. And if you have any additional comments, raise your hand again. As soon as you're finished, you will be muted again. And you may also post comments in the chat and we will document them as part of the meeting record. You can also send comments to public engagement at mbta.com or betterbusproject at mbta.com. Great. It looks like we have our first question or comment from Azia.
Hello, my name is Asia Carl. I work with Action for Equity. And my question is about determining the places for your public feedback and public comment section. I was just wondering how a community organization could coordinate with you to find out information about those meetings, or if you were willing to, if there was like at a meeting that the community had already set up, how we could coordinate with you to just have you come there to increase that community engagement part and kind of make that part a little bit easier for you guys.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, we haven't completely planned, I guess, the phase two engagement, but we're definitely open to hearing what the community is looking for. I would say the best way to contact us is betterbusproject@mbta.com. I think I can put that in the chat. Let's see. Yes. Give me just a moment. Great. Everyone should be able to see that email address. But yeah, we're definitely open to hearing any ideas. Like if you have a venue you'd like us to come to, any ideas for focus groups, we'd love to hear. Or if you just have questions too about the project as we move along, happy to connect. All right. Looks like next up is Cleo.
Hi, I'm Cleo. I am an EMT and I frequently go to medical appointments in the Longwood medical area. My question is if part of the plan is to introduce bus lanes into the Longwood medical area, you discussed in your presentation that there are issues with enforcement of pickup and drop off. How will and this has been an issue with MBTA bus lanes otherwise in the system. How will you ensure that the bus lanes remain clear for both buses and emergency vehicles?
I think I can take that one. So as far as what infrastructure is being proposed, we'll be sharing the routing and infrastructure proposals in winter 2026. So we don't really have an answer as far as like what is being proposed yet because it's being cooked up. But the existing conditions report, which will be posted online in the coming days, is really intended to establish that baseline understanding of today's challenges and opportunities so that the study team can then propose different bus circulation options as well as the supportive infrastructure so that we could launch a safe and reliable increase of bus service to the district. And actually, Katie, I don't know if you want to weigh in on the enforcement aspect.
Yeah, I can just add a little bit of information about that. So the MBTA is gearing up to launch the automated camera enforcement program on buses. We're aiming to launch on the SL4 and 5 this spring. For those who aren't familiar with this program, this would be ticketing vehicles that are parked in bus stops or bus lanes with fines. Basically, it's just to disincentivize the action that harms operations and safety. Um, I think I can pull up the link and also put it in the chat real quick. But yes, that will be rolling out this spring on the Silver Line 4 and 5. But we will slowly be integrating automated enforcement throughout the system. Um, and we're excited for this for the LMA too, because the ambulances can also use the bus lanes. So it'd be benefiting a lot more vehicles. And I'm going to drop the project page in just a second in the chat. While that link loads. I think I'll move on to a chat question, since I think this one came through before some other folks raised their hands. But Anne asked, what do you mean routing and infrastructure? Articulated buses, bus lanes, bus tunnels under intersections? I think that's a Marcella question.
Yeah, that's a great question, yeah. So what I mean by routing and infrastructure is like Katie mentioned, like there's like a bit of an asterisk or a gray box. If you look at the bus network redesign map from 2022 over the Longwood medical area, so like our study area. And what this study is intended to propose is like the bus circulation. So where these bus routes are going to go, we know their endpoint on both ends. And then once they traverse the Longwood medical area, it's a question of which streets do they use to get from that point A to point B. And when I say infrastructure, I mean any like necessary street changes that are needed to allow that routing to work in a safe and reliable way for our operators and for all of the other roadway users, so that we're all working in the flow, it's safe for everyone and results in a more reliable trip, not only for bus riders, but also for other roadway users.
Great. And then I think there was one more chat question in order before we jump back to people with their hands raised. But Terrence asked, will adding 4 bus routes along Francis Street create traffic problems with the emergency vehicles and shuttles that currently use the street? What is the plan to accommodate the buses and LMA shuttles along the street?
Yeah, I think that's also a neat question. So for the 4 bus routes on Francis Street that you're referring to, I believe that's the original 2022 bus network redesign proposal. So that's placeholder routing for the Longwood medical area. We haven't released, or we're still working on the routing proposals. So we don't have an answer quite yet. But what I can tell you is that the routing on the bus network redesign remix map on the internet is subject to change as a result of this study. So we're proposing up to 4 alternatives for that routing. And in that, we would present that plan, like of the circulation of where the buses go, as well as the infrastructure street changes that are required to make that work, to address what you're asking about emergency vehicles and shuttles that currently use the street. So that is to come in winter 2024.
All right. I think next was Allison with their hand raised.
Yes, hi. My name's Allison from Mission Hill, and my question definitely relates to what you just described. Because talking about the 4 scenarios that you're going to be presenting this coming winter, if you can explain more about how that relates to the specific bus changes that were described in the previous slide, adding that Route 12, changing the 60, the 65, the 66, etc. Are you talking about 4 different routes for 4 buses, or for, you understand what I'm asking, right?
Yeah, I think I've got it. And if I didn't fully understand, like feel free to ask me to clarify. But the 4 different scenarios, it's not necessarily going to be 4 like different routes. It's just 4 proposals for how all of the routes that Katie listed at the beginning would travel through the Longwood medical area. So like looking at it at a district level and presenting an alternative that takes in those all of those routes, and based on the level of service on certain streets, proposing changes to accommodate that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, okay, but the changes that were the suggested changes involve more than 4 buses. So I'm just assuming you're talking about more than 4 streets. You're you're going that with some new routes, you're considering streets right now that don't have bus service, I'm assuming. Is that right?
Yes, so we're looking at the study area and it's like the busable streets within the study area. So it would be a plan to address all of the routes that were listed. So the 12, the 22, the 28, the 85. And this would be like one scenario would show them using certain streets. The other scenario would be a different like thematic, a theme, to show different ways that all of those buses could go through the district, along with any like infrastructure that would be required to make that happen.
Okay, thank you. And that will be presented in a public meeting this coming winter.
Yes, yeah,
Oh.
through an engagement process this winter.
And sorry, I'm taking more than 2 minutes, but then feedback from that public engagement will influence the choices.
Yeah, it will be one of the things that we consider as we look at the different alternatives. And ultimately, there will be a preferred alternative, and we'll also have like a full report out of the themes and feedback heard, not only through that second round of engagement, but also throughout the engagement that we did over the summer in round 1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think next we have Aman.
Hi, my name's Aman. I'm currently a student at BU with the BU Urbanists, who I think are also on this call. But I had a few things that I wanted to bring up. Um, I think you mentioned that the bike lane or biking is the largest or most common mode of transport around this area. Is that correct?
Oh, that was from just a workshop we did, so it was a pretty small group. But yes, this is just from like a group of about, I think Marcella, it was like less than 15 folks. So that is not like representative of the LMA study area. That was just from a group that we did a targeted workshop with.
I gotcha. Okay. No, I just want a clarification on that. My main question is, I think something was brought up about one-ways being a little dangerous for emergency vehicles, just simply because cars don't usually get out of the way. Is that also from like information from a focus group, like regarding like emergency vehicle operators?
Yes, that was from the EMT focus group that we kind of piggybacked with the MPO
Mhm.
on. But yes, that was from EMTs.
I guess like what are the current one-ways around that area? Because my understanding is that like if I guess theoretically, if we were to convert some of these two-way streets to one-ways, you would have ample space for a dedicated bus lane, a dedicated car lane, and a dedicated bike lane. And then, when either one of those three modes of transportation are available for use, emergency vehicles have ample room to, navigate through those streets. Is that something like that could be included in the study?
I think that's a Marcella question.
Yeah, I can weigh in. So on the comments about street design, um, so as we are working with the Boston Metropolitan Planning Organization, they also had questions about street design broadly. So some of the comments that came out of those focus groups aren't necessarily based on just the Longwood medical area. We asked specific questions about the LMA, but we also talked about broader street design. So that came out of that, not necessarily out of specific one-ways in the LMA that they found problematic. But the second part of your question about the different like configurations of road, we're
Mhm.
looking at different options. What we want to do in this case is look at the circulation of buses and matching that to the data collected from existing conditions, and then proposing capital that will help us address the challenges that we see today. So we look forward to sharing more about what's being considered in winter 2020.
Okay, gotcha, yeah. And then I think my last quick question, I think this relates to a future person Ann McKinnon is about to ask, which is really good. I like that question a lot, which is what are the goals of the project? But specifically like if we're trying to improve, service to people who do happen to use multimodal transportation, like say like going from the edges of Brookline in and they take the Green Line and then want to take a closer shuttle or take a closer bus to where they're trying to go to work, so they have to use or choose to use both the train and the bus. I think it would be really interesting to see if there's a way to time the bus route with the arrival of certain trains, especially on those three closer Green Line stations.
Yeah, that's a great point, and also a great question from both Aman and Anne. But as far as the project goals, the overall bus network redesign goals are really what are guiding this study's proposals and how we're approaching the project. But just to like summarize what some of those are, it's making it easier and faster for people to take transit to the Longwood medical area at more times of day. So you kind of see that in the proposal where we increase service during off-peak hours, where we're not necessarily meeting the amount of people that are trying to reach the Longwood medical area, creating more direct connections to the LMA and creating more one-seat rides. Like I was talking about, that increase at off-peak of about 55% in people being able to get to the LMA. Having the service investments match travel demand and bringing riders closer to the Longwood medical area, ideally with access to major destinations, and then ensuring that this plan is a safe and reliable, operable bus plan. I would say, if I had to summarize all of the goals, but really we're aligned with the bus network redesign overall goals from the 2022 plan and study.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. I think we'll go back just to a few questions in the chat. And I forget if we answered this, but how many of the proposed new routes will have peak hour service 15 minutes or better? So there will be 6 frequent routes in the LMA. That's the 12, 22, 28, 39, 47, and 66. But the great thing about what the frequent bus route standard is, it's not just 15 minutes or better at peak, it's actually almost all throughout service. So it's 5 a.m. To 1 a.m. Monday through Saturday, and then 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. on Sundays. So not just peak, it will be 15 minutes or better almost all day, if that answers your question, Anne. And then the next chat question was from Sherry. So Sherry Davis is a member of United Neighborhood Association. I think I heard that the Mattapan bus line will stop or be rerouted to start this project. Will that put I think you meant strain, on other communities such as the 23 bus line to carry the load? And there was a few other questions, but maybe Marcella, do you want to answer that chunk before I jump to the next few from Sherry?
Yeah. So as part of the study, I believe when you say Mattapan bus line, if you're referring to the 22 and 28 in the bus network redesign plan, there are proposals to end the 22 in the Longwood medical area. Where exactly that is to be determined. And then the other proposal for the 28 was to extend it to Kenmore. So neither of those would go away. There may be changes, but I can't really speak to how they would change until we get to the alternatives that we'll share in winter 2026. But they will still continue. So they will not be going away as part of this project.
Great. And then the other questions from Sherry were, in your slides, I saw that there are currently many shuttle buses that travel along Longwood Ave. You stated that there are many employees traveling by bike, which I know we also addressed the bike thing and the other question from Aman, that's from a focus group, not representative of the population. And then what are the plans for the shuttle buses? And then there's one more, but I'll pause, Marcella.
Yeah, so the shuttle buses are separate non-MBTA services. So the Longwood Collective serves their member institutions, employees, and students, while the hospital shuttle serve staff, patients, visitors, their constituents. So we're coordinating with these groups as we make plans to improve our service, but we are not making recommendations for theirs. So it's a bit of like a separate planning process there.
Great. And then the last piece of Sherry's question. Your proposal also listed suburban communities to use MBTA during peak hours. Is this the reason for the up and coming plans? Maybe Sherry, we can unmute you because I'm not sure if you are referring to like the bus network redesign plans or just this study. Is Sherry still in the chat?
I think I see Sherry's hand raised.
Sherry, I see that you're unmuted. I'm not sure if maybe there's a mic or headphones plugged in. Sherry, since there's some mic problems, do you want to put another clarifying question in the chat and we can come back to you? I think we'll jump to another person who has their hand raised. I think Janie, apologies. You're up next.
Hello, my name is Johnny Rayner, and I am actually a patient at Dana-Farber, and I go to the Longwood campus for a lot of my treatments. I was diagnosed in 2022 with stage 3C lobular carcinoma, breast cancer. I had to go to the Longwood campus for my chemotherapy, which I did 16 rounds. And I also had to go there just for my blood work, which was weekly at the time, and for my check-ins. What I found is it's really congested. Sometimes I drove, and sometimes I would walk from where I lived in the South End because it was just get so congested, and I would be late and have issues getting into the parking garage or just navigating around. So I think any proposals to make it easier for patients to get in and out of their appointment, especially if they're going in for chemo or blood work, which is already stressful, it would just be something that would greatly help us and get us there without having the extra stress of trying to make sure that we're making our appointments on time and we're getting to when we need to go on time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that feedback. It's really great to hear from patients as we've been completing this engagement process. So that's extremely helpful for us. But yeah, also exactly what the experience we want to create for riders, whether they're going to an appointment or working at the hospital, is provide that high level of service that they can rely on. I don't know if Marcel, you want to add more information to that.
Yeah, no, I hear you and I appreciate you sharing your story with us. And yeah, this is a really important change for folks traveling to and from the LMA. And I hear you on needing to have reliable service because missing a medical appointment is really not an option. It's expensive and it's difficult and it's a stressful experience. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Up next, Karen.
Hi, good evening. My name is Karen Howley LaCamera, and I'm a resident of Sudbury, Massachusetts, and a patient of Dana-Farber, much like the previous speaker. Over the last year as a patient, I have driven over 40 miles to and from Dana-Farber as often as 3 to 4 times a week. And considering I am one of over the 350,000 patients that are annually treated just at Dana-Farber in the LMA, there's a significant portion of patients just like myself that use private vehicles, as this pulls from all over New England, Dana-Farber. And I support the idea of better bus service in the LMA, making it more accessible by public transportation. Also hope that you will include the patient experience in your consideration throughout this process. And I encourage this group to work closely with the hospitals in the LMA to ensure patients' needs are properly being represented, as in my case, being a person that uses a vehicle, a private vehicle to and from. And I certainly encounter all the crazy traffic, so adding that into it must be just another thing. But if you could just consider it, most appreciated. Thank you so much for having me speak.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, we are working pretty closely with the city of Boston on this as well. And also, I believe actually Tom is here, Tom Yardley from Longwood Collective, so we can really gather all needs in addressing issues in the LMA. But there's also other things highlighted in our work that we hope will, positively impact people who use all modes. For example, we know that there's a lot of really dangerous intersections where folks can, make turns unsafely in vehicles. So we also plan to address that throughout this project to increase safety, whether you're on a bike, in a car, waiting for a bus. But yes, thank you for sharing that. Let's see. Up next, I think Anne, you are next.
Okay, thank you. I think this is an overdue project, a great start. But I guess I'm concerned that this is really just a Band-Aid. The Longwood medical and academic area continues to grow, and there's no stopping it. It's got a ton of jobs and educational institutions, and as Karen said, there's a lot of patients arriving there. If we want the LMA to grow, it's really not feasible to just rely on buses. They're the lowest capacity transit vehicle we have, and we have a lot of people like Karen and others who need to drive. So we're not going to put everybody on a bus. The MBTA needs to walk and chew gum at the same time. Work on improving the buses as you're proposing, but we really, really need to do what was proposed 50 years ago, which was a circumferential rail transit to serve the Longwood medical area. Trying to solve problems with buses, and not even all articulated buses that hold a lot of people, is just not going to work in the long run. It may work for 10 years, but as the LMA continues to grow, you cannot solve the problem with buses. And further, we're patting ourselves on the back saying we've got great one-seat ride, but a 60-minute bus ride to go 10 miles is absurd. And no one will do that. So I don't know what your demand estimates are saying, and how many people are actually going to take a bus like that. But I really think that we've got to get back to looking at some sort of grade separation, whether it's just at intersections or a full transit tunnel to serve the Longwood medical area for the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Anne. That's really helpful feedback. Definitely something we've heard from other folks. I don't know, Marcel, if you want to say anything additional about maybe bus capacity.
I do, yeah. So this is definitely something that has come up throughout our conversations with different stakeholders. And for this study in particular, it's a shorter term plan looking at the near term implementation of the bus network redesign recommendation. But we have been coordinating with the MBTA policy team that's looking at longer range plans and prioritization of projects, and relaying a lot of these concerns and comments, because I hear you, it's something that we've heard. But specifically for this project, we're looking at near-term implementation of bus network redesign. So like in the next like 5-ish years. And as you might imagine, tunneling is a very long-term project. So we're really looking at the short term, relatively speaking.
Great. Thank you, Marcella. Tom, you're next.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening, and it's interesting to hear different perspectives as always. The MBTA has been working with us, and we appreciate that. And I think there are some sort of important perspectives that need to be brought to the discussion tonight. And I welcome questions directed at us and others who have sort of lived and worked in the district for a long time. By way of background, the Longwood Collective, whom I represent, is the nonprofit organization representing 22 institutions in the Longwood medical and academic area. And we operate a fleet of 40 shuttles and offsite parking, and our members together contribute over $24 million in TPAS subsidies. So we care very deeply about the MBTA and making sure that service is improved. We also run a transportation management association promoting increased bus service. I think a couple of the comments made, and actually most recently what Anne McKinnon said, it can't be sort of, you can't state it put more emphasis on it. Buses alone are definitely not going to solve our transportation challenges. I will say, I think from our perspective, and the big thing that I think we can celebrate together is that this long needed bus project is finally coming to fruition. The key aspect from our perspective is that we are getting new bus service reliably, hopefully, and throughout 7 days a week, and starting at 5 in the morning, going through 1 a.m. in the morning, providing consistent service to the district. I think the challenge and the whole reason why this study exists is how it gets routed through the district, and that should not be taken lightly. Longwood hospitals provide care to the sickest of the sick, and most of those, unless you're fortunate and live close by, are coming by car. And if we ignore that, we are threatening the viability of the district, and especially with infrastructure improvements like bus lanes, when there really is no room. Longwood Avenue has one lane in each direction until you get to one intersection near BI. So these are just things that we think about, we live and see every day. We have to be very careful. I also want to be clear about something, just to be clear, we do surveys, our members do surveys of how our employees travel to work. 4% of our employees cycle to work. So we care about them too, but it's a very small fraction of the people traveling to the district. 77% of patients live outside the bus catchment area. 70% of employees live outside the bus catchment area. We are going to need much bigger solutions to fix these things. And at the same time, I think we need to be very, very careful about how we treat Longwood streets, which have to serve patients and ambulance access. Also, just one thing I want to correct as well. We've also looked at data, and there's not very much of it, on how ambulances interact with bus lanes, and it's at best inconclusive. Generally, drivers pull over to the right, which means they're in the bus lane, and that's not good for ambulances getting through when they go by. So in addition to there not being much room or any room on Longwood streets, I think we just need to look very carefully at what the data is. So I think if I want to leave the meeting here with a couple of thoughts. One is we are definitely supportive of better bus service coming to Longwood, serving neighborhoods that have never had a one-seat ride. That's very important to us and our institutions, but how they travel through the district is very important. And I think it's a misunderstanding to think that you need to speed buses through a district like this with such heavy volumes of pedestrian and foot traffic. The most important thing is to get to the district and provide people access. It's very easy to walk through the district. It's connected by pedestrian level walkways, and the distances are not that great. So we've got to look very carefully at how the streets in Longwood currently operate, such as Francis Street and Longwood Avenue. So that's the end of my long speech. Thank you for not putting a time limit on what I have to say, but I appreciate that. And I'd be happy to take any questions from anyone on any of these topics. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, definitely echoing a lot of what we've heard from the group. And thank you for the support on our bus network redesign work. Not to punt your comment or question, but yeah, there's lots of great, feedback about some long range planning topics here. We will definitely be happy to share those with the long range planning team. So if anyone has feedback or comments about that, like please email us and we will send those to the right folks. But yes, thank you, Tom, for your support on our more acute bus challenges in the Longwood medical area. Let's see. Up next, we have Eric.
Hi, thanks very much. Yes, I'm Eric Willison. I'm a resident of Somerville, a patient in Longwood. And in particular, thank you for the research into people's preferences on proximity versus reliability. I'm going to write this in the chat also to make it easier to follow along. How do you weigh specifically the impacts on people who might lose proximity as a result of the Better Bus project? For example, I'm relieved to see the new plan for the 85, which better replaces the CT2, but until this latest version, there was going to be no one-seat route from East Somerville to the Longwood medical area, which would have been a meaningful loss in service. I'd love to hear briefly how you think about knowing people might prefer proximity, but it's different if you lose what you had before.
Thank you for that. And also thank you for the 85 CT2 shout out. Marcella, do you want to take this question?
Yeah, I can take that question. So on the 85, for the study specifically, we're looking at the outline of the study area in the Longwood medical area. So the changes to the 85 outside of that are out of our particular study's recommendation. But I hear you on weighing the trade-offs about proximity and access. So that is like a broader effort of the study itself and looking at origin and demand or origin and destination of various folks. There was another thing that I was going to say as far as like the recommendations. Oh, yes. The ultimate goals of the bus network redesign proposal resulted in some trade-offs. So those were weighed as part of the process back in 2022. And that is a consideration. And I think as far as today, it's messaging to riders how their trip will change and ensuring that if we are introducing, let's say a new transfer, ensuring that that continues to be fully accessible and making that as comfortable as possible. I think I answered your question, but feel free to ask a follow-up if I did not.
All right, thank you. I think up next is Micah.
Hi, I'm Micah. I am a member at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And earlier in the slides, it was mentioned how on Avenue Louis Pasteur, there is a lot of traffic early in the morning. And I think part of that can be a result of the drop off pickup at Boston Latin. And of course, like these parents are trying to get their kids to school, but is there any coordination with the school about like how can we work on that? Just because I feel like the drop off kind of just halts all traffic on the street. So I was just curious if there's any coordination with Boston Latin on this project.
Maybe I'm happy to take this question. Great question, Micah. So we haven't gotten quite to the point of having the routing and infrastructure proposal to have meaningful conversations about like any impacts, but I hear you, the pickup drop off definitely could be contributing to some of the AM peak snarls on Avenue Louis Pasteur. But that is something that we definitely want to have an open dialogue about. I know the MBTA run school trips that support students getting to Boston Latin. So there is coordination on the existing like planning effort. So once we have those routing scenarios and we're able to have a conversation about like what does this actually potentially look like, that is something that we definitely want to have a conversation about so that we can ensure that we're not inhibiting or making it more difficult for students to reach their school because they're very much big stakeholders in this neighborhood.
Thank you. Next I have Asia up again.
Yes, good evening. Sorry. I just was curious about the timeline for like notifying the public about any of the changes you plan to make following these plans or following the community review process on the 26th. Like how long do you plan to like give people notice that the buses will be changing, names will be changing, stuff like that? And like, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Um, so to answer your question, unfortunately, the answer is that we don't really know the timeline. There's just a lot of factors that go into actually implementing these kinds of changes. For example, folks who've been following the bus network redesign, you may have been aware that we wanted to launch that a little bit earlier than we anticipated because of some operator headcount challenges. So, for example, we definitely need to have a good supply of operators before we announce these changes. In addition to so many other factors like having enough buses, making sure that there's not a bunch of operators, retiring at this time, that we have all the supporting infrastructure in place and ready to go, because we all know construction takes a lot longer than is promised often. So these are all the kinds of factors, along with many more, that allow us to make these changes possible. Of course, we will continue to update community members as we get closer in implementing these kinds of changes. But yes, unfortunately, I don't have a great answer about timeline, but you will hear from us as we get closer, of course. I don't know, Marcel, if you want to add anything else about timeline onto this.
Not not particularly. Like in winter 2026 is our general timeline for engagement specifically on the planning study. But actually, you know what? I will caveat. So the planning study will finish the bus network redesign map. It'll draw the lines on the map of where these routes are going to go in the area where we don't have certainty, so our study area. And then once the routes are actually implemented, they would go through our like engagement process to inform riders that these changes are going to happen. We won't finish the study and then immediately jump into making all of the changes because as Katie alluded to, there's a lot of factors that go into when certain changes happen over others, but we will keep that line of communication open and have early notification. So riders know that if their bus route is changing.
Hey, and up next we have Mela. Hello, Mela.
Mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I have a few questions. So I am Mela Bush, and I am the coordinator of transit equity and environmental justice at Action for Equity. One of my questions is about the, for example, the 22 and 28 buses, and the bus network redesign, that it was approved at the end of 2022 by a former board of directors that no longer is seated. And so there's a current board of directors, and I want to know, and this is a whole new board. My question is, the 22 and 28 buses will no longer terminate under this plan of bus network redesign at Ruggles Station. And that was approved by the board back then based on data from 2019 before the pandemic. Do you have current data around the feasibility or the logic behind removing the termination of those buses? And would the board have to approve any changes that you would be making to the original plan, like that was approved in 2022? So that's a couple of things. The termination and board approval. So that's my first question.
Well, I can take that question, Mela. So the map that you're referencing is the bus network redesign remix map. And that routing is where the study team put down the lines, but as Katie alluded to earlier, there's like an asterisk. So the board approved that map with the caveat that the Longwood medical area routing would be studied further, and the recommendation of that will complete the bus network redesign map. So we will propose up to 4 routing scenarios of how those bus routes will travel in the Longwood medical area. And when we publish those in 2026, those are 4 different alternatives that we'll consider with current data. So this study may build off of some of the information collected in the 2019 to 2022 planning process for bus network redesign. But the existing conditions report that we'll publish on the website in the coming days has current data. So all of the routing proposals will be grounded in the most current data. So hopefully that helps with the concern that there's a use of old data. We're updating everything, and that's how we're going to guide the routing proposals going forward.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And so we need to wait until you roll out those 4 scenarios. Is that what you're saying? Which may not be the same as they were in 2022.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So I'll leave that alone. Given that the Kenmore station can't fit the 28 bus in it. So yeah. So that's an issue too. The second question that I have is related to infrastructure changes and bus lanes and things. So these bus lanes are will these things be will you be coordinating? This is my question. Will you be coordinating with the city of Boston around community engagement as it relates to adding bus lanes? Because the mayor had to go back and backtrack on some things she did last year, and there was a whole study, a whole survey done related to that. So will there be a coordination between the city of Boston and the MBTA as it relates to any infrastructure changes in bus lanes that would be added into the streets in order to facilitate the changes in the Longwood medical area? That is my question.
Yeah, of course. Okay, also a great question. Yes. So part of this study is close coordination with roadway owners. The city of Boston owns a good number of the roads in the study area. So we've been closely coordinating with them throughout this process. And going forward, as we talk about the routing and infrastructure scenarios, we will continue to coordinate with them on outreach,
No,
yeah,
sorry. Yes, sorry.
yeah. So to answer your question very quickly, yes, we will be coordinating very closely with the city of Boston. And they have been a really great partner thus far in this project. So we don't anticipate that we will contact them less or coordinate with them less.
But that's not actually at the center of my question. The center of the question is not just that the MBTA coordinates with the city of Boston, but how community engagement, collaborative community engagement related to infrastructure changes as it relates to bus lanes and other things, and not just that the city and the agency are communicating with each other. How is that being communicated to the public and public engagement related to those changes?
Okay, I hear you. So we are still working on our engagement plans for winter 2026. Nothing has been finalized yet, but when we do prepare that plan and calendar, we will be coordinating with the city of Boston to ensure that we're reaching the right community partners. We've been working with the team over at the city of Boston as we craft our stakeholder list, as well as the MBTA's community engagement and external affairs groups. So there is a lot of thought and coordination across municipalities to ensure that we're reaching the right people, but I can't speak to exact details for winter 2026 because we haven't formalized that plan yet. But we're also open to any ideas. I think Katie shared the Better Bus Project email address. So please feel free to share any ideas that you have as we're still shaping that plan.
Okay, so we plan to invite the city and the MBTA into discussions with community, but I was just wondering what your plans were to actually include community engagement as it relates to these changes and the street infrastructure changes. Was that part of your plan going forward prior to the winter of 2026? So that if there are going to be changes, like changing one-way streets and adding all of these buses into that rather narrow street area, you know, how, and then saying bus lanes, like how is the community who is being impacted by these changes going to be engaged so that our feedback could be considered so that these changes will be done with our feedback, our input, and how it would impact local residents and riders, etc.
Yeah, Mela, I can jump in. I think it was the last slide before this, but we outlined kind of what we expect winter 2026 engagement to look like once we do have these scenarios. Of course, we will, tweak this a little bit. We don't have like a written out plan yet so far, but once we see what these scenarios look like, we'll definitely create a very open, transparent community engagement process. But we did outline that we would do in-person community meetings, and we would have more operator engagement with bus operators and EMT operators, and focus groups, as well as updating information online to be as transparent as possible. And then, of course, the Better Bus Project inbox is always open. If folks can't make the meetings or would prefer to communicate online. But yes, we'll keep all these channels open, and you'll definitely hear from us once we, start scheduling things and thinking about what, focus groups actually look like once we're able to analyze what these scenarios are.
Yes, we just heard about all of this, and it seems that as usual, we're the last to know, and we are the ones who will be most directly impacted, like losing access to Ruggles would be like a major blow to 28 and 22 bus riders. And so we're hoping that your 4 scenarios do not include eliminating that connection and, maybe going to Ruggles Station and through Ruggles Station as opposed to cutting it out and going all the way down Tremont Street, because nobody that we have surveyed of over 500 people thinks that that's a good idea. Maybe 10 people did, but the rest of the 480 or 90 people pretty much said no. So, we do have data, we have surveys, we've outreached and we've held community meetings and so on and so forth. So we have the information related to that. And, maybe just figuring out a way to go out the back of Ruggles Station as the Longwood medical shuttles already do and let people transfer there. So I'm hoping you consider some of these recommendations, and thank you.
Thank you, Mela. Yeah, shoot us an email if you have any other comments, but I'm just going to move forward with some questions in the chat because we only have 4 minutes left. So Ralph asks, I could not make out any of the important details of the maps on my small screen. Are there bigger versions to be found on the MBTA website? Yes, we will update the this event page with the slide and recording. So those should be live in a couple days. And then the project page for the LMA bus circulation study has the project area map, which I will link in the chat for folks. And apologies, I'm just trying to be a little fast because we have 3 minutes left. Let's see. Linda asked, I think we kind of answered this, Marcella, but is the bus 28 still being considered to bypass Ruggles? Folks have opposed that change, which I know we kind of addressed this, that we'll come out with the scenarios and we'll continue to engage folks in engagement in winter. And then also, will there be phase changes to test the proposals? Touched on this just a little bit earlier, but when these are implemented, we don't have a timeline for that. It all depends on, what the operators are, infrastructure, and so on. So we can't quite promise anything about how the route changes will be implemented, but definitely more information on that to come. And then next we have Jerry. It's Jerry from the Urbanism Club at BU. Thank you for the meeting. Looking forward to the LMA, especially increased service and the potential for much needed dedicated bus priority infrastructure. On another note, we know this is not under the MBTA's jurisdiction, but we need better pedestrian access to the LMA, especially intersections with the Riverway. All of these crossings feel dangerous. I want to stress specifically the Park Drive and Riverway intersection, where BU students on the Fenway campus must either take a circuitous route using crosswalks, adding 5 minutes to the time to cross, or riskily cross where there are not crosswalks, where there are also often emergency vehicles. Thanks again for sharing. Thank you, Jerry, for the comment. Yes, this is something I think we'll still continue to coordinate with the city on. But this is really helpful feedback too, because bus access doesn't just end at the bus stop, and having walkable, safe neighborhoods is important to complement our bus service. And then we do have 1 minute left, so I think I'm going to pass it to Patricia, who is our last attendee with their hand up.
Thank you. My name is Patricia Flaherty. I work with Mission Hill Neighborhood Housing Services. And I just wanted to follow up on 2 points made by Mela and earlier by Tom, just the impact on the community. I know you're going to meet with the city, but sometimes we find out about things after decisions have been made and the actual impact on the neighborhood is not addressed. So for example, the bus lane on Huntington that eliminated a left-hand turn without any discussion about design opportunities for the left-hand turn in Brigham Circle caused a lot of impact. It caused impact to our commercial center, ways people get to the grocery store, throws cars into the residential neighborhood. I know those issues are not the T's issues, but it's only by having meetings where people can look at what's being proposed and talk about the impacts that we get to really flush these out. And it's been really problematic. And I also want to agree with Mela. It's important that we're looking at what's being proposed and discussing them with the communities most impacted. And so while Tom said we really need to look at the nature of the streets in the LMA, and we agree with that, and the amount of pedestrian traffic, I would say the residential streets leading up and into the LMA that are part of Mission Hill need to be looked at carefully too. And all of a sudden Tremont Street going from a small Main Streets district residential street to a major arterial connector is really concerning to us. And we want to understand that how you're going to deal with capacity, pedestrian capacity, the main streets needs for loading and unloading, the needs to actually move cars into both the LMA and into our commercial district. So I think that it feels like there needs to be some really like focus groups that are in the neighborhood talking about specific proposals. In-person meetings, I think, are always best. So I want to suggest, and if you need us to co-host one, we would welcome doing that.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Yeah, thank you for the offer. Yeah, we definitely want to do some more in-person events through the 2026 engagement, and all great points you bring up. I do want to be respectful of people's times, especially our paid interpreters. But for folks who do want to talk with us more, or we didn't get to your question, please email betterbusproject@mbta.com. We'd be happy to connect. But once again, thank you all for attending tonight. It was a pleasure to speak with you all. But yeah, Marcella and I will be available online if folks have other questions over email.
Thanks for being here, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.